activist Janine Garofalo. Good to see you.
Thank you. You know, there's nothing more interesting than seeing a bunch of racists become confused and angry at a speech they're not quite certain what he's saying. It sounds right to them, and then it doesn't make sense. Which let's be very honest about what this is about. It's not about bashing Democrats. It's not about taxes. They have no idea what the Boston Tea Party was about.
That's right.
They don't know their history at all. This is about hating a black man in the White House. This is racism straight up. That is nothing but a bunch of tea-bagging rednecks. And there is no way around that. And, you know, you can tell these type of right-wingers anything and they'll believe it except the truth. You tell them the truth and they become, it's like showing Frankenstein's monster fire. They become confused and angry and highly volatile. That guy caused in them feelings they don't know, because their limbic brain, we've discussed this before, the limbic brain inside a right-winger or Republican or conservative or your average white power activist, the limbic brain is much larger in their head space than in a reasonable person, and it's pushing against the frontal lobe. So their synapses are misfiring. Is Bernie Goldberg listening?
Yes.
Yeah, because Bernie might not have heard this when I said this the first time. So, Bernie, this is for you. It is a neurological problem that we're dealing with.
Well, what do you do about it, though? I mean, our friend in Pensacola there, who played them like a $3 fiddle, and led them right down the garden path with nothing but facts, and then they went, "Wait a minute, that doesn't sound like Rush Limbaugh."
Right.
If you can't get them to make that last leap to what are we all doing here? Howard Johnson is wrong. You know, how do you break through that?
I don't think you do for most of them. This is it's almost pathological or elevated to a philosophy or a lifestyle. Yeah. And again, this is about racism. It could be any issue, any port in a storm. These guys hate that a black guy is in the White House. But they immigrant bash, they pretend it's taxes and tea bags. And like I said, most of them couldn't probably tell you thing one about taxation without representation, the Boston Tea Party, the British imperialism, whatever the history lesson has to be. But these people, all white, for the most part, unless there's some people with Stockholm syndrome.
Right, and I didn't see them. They were in the back. They weren't near the cameras, which is bad strategy on the part of the people who were staging this at Fox.
True. And Fox News loves to foment this anti-intellectualism because that's their bread and butter. If you have a cerebral electorate, Fox News goes down the toilet, you know, very, very fast. But it is sick and sad to see Neil Cavuto doing that. They've been doing this for years. That's why Roger Ailes and Rupert Murdoch started this venture, is to disinform and to coarsen and dumb down a certain segment of the electorate. But what is really, I didn't know there were so many racists left. I didn't know that. You know, because as I said, the Republican the conservative movement has now crystallized into the white power movement.
Is that not a bad long-term political strategy? Because even though your point is, you know, terrifying that there are that many racists left, the flip side of it is there aren't that many racists left.
You're the minority. I mean, literally tens of people showed up to this thing across the country.
But if you spear your television network or your political party towards a bunch of guys who are just looking for a reason to yell at the black president, eventually you will marginalize yourself out of business, won't you? Or at least
no, there's no shortage. Here's what the right wing has there's no shortage of the natural resources of ignorance, apathy, hate, fear. As long as those things are in the collective conscious and unconscious, the Republicans will have some votes. Fox News will have some viewers. But what else have they got? If they didn't do that, who's going to watch? You know what I mean? They've got.
This is what black people do to other black people. In this situation, I compare it to the teabaggers, right? Remember, everyone used to criticize the teabaggers for potentially being racist against Obama. And as you saw, you know, Janine Garofalo pointed out a key point, is that it's like showing the movie Frankenstein or whatever, and they become confused and angry, and they're like, I don't know what they're talking about. They're not. Black people do that too. Here's an example. Eric Garner's wife says he was lazy, and black people say, well, what? She's criticizing her husband for being lazy? He was murdered by the cops. Why is she doing that? She's a sellout. She's a sellout. Here's the thing. Maybe she's telling the truth. And some would say, well, even if he was lazy, why would you insult your husband after he was murdered? Well, it goes to show potentially that his actions, and I don't like people framing it to where you're saying, well, that's the reason he died, because he was lazy. It's not that. Things that led up to the situation. The same with Mike Brown. Dr. Ray Higgins in the conscious community, he's been called a sellout. He's been called an Uncle Tom. He's been called an agent. You know, they say he's a cop, or he used to be a cop. And you say, well, you can't be a cop in the black conscious community. What are you doing? It's only white people who are cops. That is the attitude and mentality of actually a huge percentage of the black race that feel if you're a cop and you're black, you're a sellout. Particularly, let me just touch on the conscious community right now, because I used to be a part of the conscious community, but now I consider myself just a truther. I used to be a part of the black conscious community, but I started to notice that it was always blame the white man, which is quite contradictory because on one end they would criticize black people for their behavior and saying black people, we need to step it up. We need to stop killing each other. We need to stop treating each other like this. But then that same type of product of that environment in interacting with Officer Wilson, you claim that he was racist. Well, wait a minute. Michael Brown was a product of the very black people that you criticize. But then it's different when he encounters a white person because automatically it's racism. I just wanted to say that. The problem is black people hearing another black person, just like Charles Barkley, criticize black people, they're Uncle Toms. All of a sudden, Uncle Toms, they're, you're a traitor to the race. You're not a traitor to the race when you're concerned about the race. If anything, they're more concerned than you'll ever be. Because they're concerned where the race is headed if it continues to go down that negative path. So those black people are concerned. Eric Garner's wife said he was lazy. Maybe he was. That doesn't mean that she's she got paid to say that. They made her say it. They tricked her into saying it so it wouldn't look like it was racism. She said it wasn't race. And I believe it wasn't race because you could have had a 350-pound white man out there selling cigarettes that the cops have been called numerous times on that person, and he resisted arrest. They would have did the same thing to him. See, black people are brainwashed with the obsession of racism. Racism exists, but racism doesn't exist the way black people paint it. And all of those white Democrats, and let me say this, I'm not a Republican. Because if I criticize Democrats, that means I'm a Republican. People do not use their common sense. Because what? Like Janine Garofalo says, it's like showing the movie Frankenstein when it's something that doesn't sound right to them, that doesn't go with their strategy, their agenda. Automatically, you're racist, or you're a traitor, you're this and that. No, just a genuine person that tells the truth about whatever color. Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, all the races. If you're a bad person, you're a bad person. If you're committing crimes, you're committing crimes and you're a criminal. Simple as that. Michael Brown committed a crime, then he committed another crime. But there are black people out protesting, saying he had his hands up and he was surrendering. And if you go against that narrative, you're an Uncle Tom. And what does that tell you? That tells you that even though what was presented in court shows that Michael Brown attacked the officer, the gunshot wound chart shows that Michael Brown was not shot in the back, even though his friend said he was shot in the back. All of these things, black people still can't grasp or don't want to grasp the fact that Michael Brown committed those crimes. Right? He did it. And the problem is, there is racism with black people against white people. When we think racism, we automatically think white people against black people. Racism exists in every race. Black people are racist against themselves. White people are racist against themselves. Hispanics are racist against themselves. Asians are racist against themselves. You have Hispanics that are racist against Mexicans. Mexicans are racist against Hispanics. Blacks are racist against Africans. Africans are racist against blacks. Chinese are racist against the Asian American. Asian American is racist against the Chinese, Japanese. You have racism everywhere. But what's presented to you is white people being racist against black people. This is a conditioning, this is a brainwashing in the minds from the shadow government to make black people run out and attack white people. Sure, racism exists. Racism exists. There is no denying racism exists from one race to another, but racism exists everywhere. So we should just talk about racism as a whole. Let's talk about racism with black people. Black racists against other black people. Let's have a special on that on CNN, MSNBC. Let's talk about that, huh? We don't want to talk about that, I guess. To wrap this up, black people are no different from those teabaggers when it comes to racism, because the thing they do is they use emotions. They use emotions as opposed to using their brains. So if it was a black person that committed a crime, and I'll leave you with this to give you kind of an understanding of why Eric Garner's wife said he was lazy. Let's say you have a 19, 20-year-old criminal out there, and he broke into someone's house, and he was always committing crimes. He had felonies. He was in and out of jails, out there selling drugs, this and that. Mother got tired of him, father got tired of him. They just, all of a sudden, he's shot dead by the homeowners. You know what the parents would say? The parents wouldn't be out there, oh, it shouldn't have killed him. Why did they do this? Racism. No, they would say, my son was a criminal. That is the honest truth. And when you live a criminal lifestyle, these type of things happen. I'm hurt. I'm devastated that my son is no longer with me and with us as a family. But I will not deny the lifestyle that he lived that contributed to that. That's a real black person. Not a black person that says, well, I don't really care what lifestyle he was living. I mean, he was out there killing people, robbing people. He did time for murder, and he got out, and he was selling drugs and this and that. He's just a criminal, and the white person shot him, and that's racist. That's a black person not being honest with themselves about their race and the problems that their race has, and not holding their race accountable for their actions that contribute to negative interactions with other races. This is a problem. This is a problem. And I feel it's my duty to inform black people about these psychological tactics that the shadow government, the entity, and also other black people in their little secret society, they have about race baiting and feeling like they're going to get some reparations if we all just stand united. Well, how about we all stand united and make sure that these young black men finish school and not be out here on the streets selling drugs, getting involved with the cops? Because, if you're in school or if you're working, you're rarely interacting with cops in the first place. How about that, Al Sharpton?
There's nothing more interesting than seeing a bunch of racists become confused and angry at a speech they're not quite certain what he's saying. It sounds right to them, and then it doesn't make sense. Which let's be very honest about what this is about. It's not about bashing Democrats. It's not about taxes. They have no idea what the Boston Tea Party was about.
Right.
They don't know their history at all. This is about hating a black man in the White House. This is racism straight up. That is nothing but a bunch of tea-bagging rednecks. And there is no way around that. And you can tell these type of right-wingers anything and they'll believe it except the truth. You tell them the truth and they become, it's like showing Frankenstein's monster fire. They become confused and angry and highly volatile. That guy caused in them feelings they don't know, because their limbic brain, we've discussed this before, the limbic brain inside a right-winger or Republican or conservative or your average white power activist, the limbic brain is much larger in their head space than in a reasonable person, and it's pushing against the frontal lobe. So their synapses are misfiring. Is Bernie Goldberg listening?
Nice.
Yeah, because Bernie might not have heard this when I said this the first time. So Bernie, this is for you. It is a neurological problem that we're dealing with.
Well, what do you do about it, though? I mean, our friend in Pensacola there, who played them like a $3 fiddle, and led them right down the garden path with nothing but facts, and then they went, wait a minute,